G'day YouTube, Baubles on a lot here. Have you ever heard the story of the grandfather's axe? The proud possessor of which boasts that he's still using his grandfather's axe and his father replaced the handle and he's replaced the head. Ever heard that story? Some people put a lot of stock in their axes, whereas I'm in the not so much category. 12, 13 years ago, my son accidentally ran over the handle of this one. It does for me, and it works. It was made in the USA, and it's probably 30 years old, I guess, on its second handle. Last week, while splitting wood at my mother's place, both of the axes in her woodshed broke. This one, which my son put the head on when he was, I don't know, 14 years old or something. And I attempted to explain to him that he'd actually put the head on it upside down because the beak is actually designed to protect the handle from being impacted by the wood, which it conspicuously fails to do when you put the head on upside down. So anyway, rather than crush his little ego by taking it off and redoing it, I let him persevere with it, thinking that at some point, he would realise the error of his ways. However, he sort of moved on and got along with his life, and I wound up having to cut my mother's firewood with the axe that my son had put his Chinese head on. And finally, eventually, it gave up the ghost. Took a long time, being held together with splinter wooden wedges. So I went and I grabbed the other axe that was in the woodshed. And this one, it's sort of been out in the sun for a while, if you judge by the curvature of the haft of it. And I hadn't used it for an awfully long time and it broke. So I went and I visited the hardwaring of the shop. I purchased on the left a $19 El Cheapo spotted gum axe handle. And on the right, we have the Hickory $43 axing of the handle. And in between them, we have a 2-pack of wedges. But part 1 of the line 1, you can see that I've had to do a repair with 2-part epoxy onto the not quarter cut sawn $43 Hickory expensive axe handle. Not happy, Krugers. Not happy at all. But anyway, the plan is that the repaired hickory axe handle goes onto my son's axe head. However, me not being as silly as I look, it's going to go onto it that way. while the 800 of the millimetre spotted gum, it should be replacing the ancient warped broken handle. Which used to be on this head. And this particular head has a fairly sort of particularly fat profile to it. If you look at it from this point of view, in terms of how thick the edge is and how the pitch of the head diverges from the edge. Don't actually know that I want to be using this axe head, and it's not as if there is no choice. Over here we have the welded repaired axe that my father used to use, and over here we have the old man's kindling splitting axe head, which has a rather different profile. Okay, so on the right is the axe head from the handle which broke, and you can see the profile coming back from the edge on it. It's a kind of an old-fashioned splitting axe. And it sort of came with the property. This is the one my father had, which was more of a racing profile head. If that makes any sense to you. Although it's fairly clear that the pair of them are otherwise identical in side profile. So anyway, the theory is that this is to receive the $43 repaired hickory handle in the correct orientation, whereas this is to get its warpificated handle replaced with a spotted gum paragon of straightness. And the ancient over-fat head is to be replaced by my father's, aka my son's grandfather's, household everyday axe head. So first I'm going to want to get rid of some of that rust. After having watched a few videos on a gunsmithing channel or two, what I propose to do, having put the axe head into a pot, lit up the stove and filled the pot with water, my plan is to convert that solid hard rust into something that's a little bit easier to brush away by boiling it. And that should not affect the temper of the steel at all. And while we wait for that to boil, we can convey these to their appropriate resting / storage spaces. do, I think. My father's axe, my mother's boyfriend's axe. Yeah, fitting. So, while all that's happening, and although this is thoroughly broken just below the axe head, the plan is to remove my son's roofing bolt and the wedges. Before removing the head for later use. Nicely work hardened and formed, and then I try and pull out all of these splinter wedges which I've fitted over the intervening years. In an ongoing sort of never-ending effort to stabilise the head. There was quite a bit of wood in there. So, now we retrieve the head. Come on, get off there. First blood to the axe. However, guess who won? And there's another 15 years worth of work. On to the reliquary, the perhaps one day emergency firewood pile. And meanwhile, here we see the boiling of the axe head. And my theory is this will make the rust a whole lot easier to remove with a wire brush. Just kind of sort of for the look of the thing. And I don't really want it to be boiling dry like that, so I'll just add some more dihydrogen monoxide. That's what they call it, isn't it? H2O. Yep, there we go. All submerged. Maybe give it a bit more. And you can indeed see the beginnings of the dislodged rust that's come off the steel of the axe head, and it's now floating about on the bottom of the pot. So, a waste of time this is not. And now we take to such nicks and dings as there are. With a file and dress the dings out of it. And bring it back to something like what it used to be when it were new. Right, there we go. Easy peasy Japanesey. Look at that. Back with a new video soon. Ciao.